Hello and welcome. Thanks for joining us. Now, APC presidential candidate Muhammadu Buhari made his long-anticipated appearance at Chatham House in London, where he spoke on the topic Prospects for Democratic Consolidation in Africa, Nigeria's Transition. The former head of state used the opportunity to deal with some issues critics have raised about his candidacy. Let's start off with why he led a coup that toppled a civilian government in 1983. Here's the explanation given by the former head of state.
On a personal note, the phased end of the USSR was a turning point for me. It convinced me that change can be brought about without firing a single shot. As you all know, I had been a military head of state in Nigeria for 20 months. We intervened because we were unhappy with the state of affairs in our country. We wanted to arrest the drift, driven by patriotism, influenced by the prevalence and popularity of such drastic measures all over Africa and elsewhere. We fought our way to power. But the global triumph of democracy has shown that another and a preferable path to change is possible. It is an important lesson I have carried with me since, and a lesson that is not lost on the African continent.
Now, Buhari has been accused in several quarters of being a dictator as a result of the fact that he once led a military government in this country. So some critics say, should he become president, he would actually be a dictator and probably send anyone who perceives to be corrupt to jail. Here's what he had to say about those accusations.
I have heard and read references to me as a former dictator in many respected British newspapers, including the well-regarded Economist. Let me say, without sounding defensive, that dictatorship goes with military rule, though some might be less dictatorial than others. I take responsibility for whatever happened under my watch. I cannot change the past, but I can change the present and the future. So before you is a former military ruler and a converted Democrat who is ready to operate under democratic norms and is subjecting himself to the rigors of democratic election for the fourth time. You may ask, why is he doing this? This is a question I ask myself all the time too. And here is my humble answer. Because the work of making Nigeria great is not yet done. Because I still believe that change is possible, this time through the ballot. And most importantly, because I still have the capacity and the passion to dream and work for a Nigeria that will be respected again in the Committee of Nations and that all Nigerians will be proud of.
Well, joining me right now to discuss the speech of the APC presidential candidate at Chatham House in London are two gentlemen. Liberal Soshoma is a lawyer and a political analyst, and Wahabo Okoniro is a chieftain of the People's Democratic Party, PDP, and one-time chairman of Ikeja local government area in Lagos State. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thank you for this opportunity.
Liberals, let us start with the last thing Buhari said there. Basically saying, look, I am a converted Democrat. I take responsibility for what my regime did as a military ruler, but I'm a converted Democrat and basically ready to follow democratic process to get to power.
You see, for taking responsibility for whatever happened at that time, he won my respect. Because, why? Because this is a climb where leaders hardly take responsibility. We see them shift blame. It's always very convenient and easy for them to say, though I was at the helm of affair at that time, some of the boys that were operating under us didn't really have our mandate to do what they were doing, but he accepted responsibility to say, look, whatever happened, I accept responsibility. But it's in the past. I don't have power to change what had happened, but I have power over the future. And so I have converted. And it's for me. I've also listened to people say because he was a former military ruler, and so even if he voted into office, he will be a dictator. I disagree. We saw Obasanjo in this country, a former military ruler, who tried to dictate to others, and Nigerians rejected it. And so even if we passed that era, even if you try to be, and I really don't see Buhari from his disposition so far, and having consistently contested in previous election, and then also there's one thing he did consistently also, have always going to court to challenge, that's following the rule of law, to challenge every process he feels, you know, it's not proper. And so for me, these are signs of somebody who truly is ready to abide by democratic norms. So we have seen people who, even though not former military rulers, but, you know, find it difficult even obeying court judgments.
But let me ask you, Mr. Okoniro, your party, for instance, has actually come out to say, look, this man is a former dictator, and if Nigerians vote for this man, there's just no way he can run as a true Democrat. But listening to him here, are you convinced that this is a changed Buhari, and that if by chance he wins the election, defeats your party, defeats your candidate, that you know, he would play by the rules of democracy?
Well, my own opinion is a bit different from my colleague's opinion. My own personal opinion is the fact that once a dictator will always be a dictator.
Oh, really?
Yes. Go back to history. Look at people like Napoleon Bonaparte, Otto von Bismarck, Garibaldi. They were all dictators, and they remained dictators until they died. Even look at the recent example in Nigeria. General Obasanjo.
Even though those dictators you just mentioned now, we never had a situation where they were subjected to elections and all of that. So, but go on.
Well, but all I'm just telling you that once a dictator is always a dictator.
No, I just need to point that.
I'm coming to home now. I want to come to a recent experience of Obasanjo, who was once a military dictator, and he had an opportunity to become the president, an elected president of Nigeria. We all knew what Obasanjo did. I happened to be one of the victims of Obasanjo. When I was the local government chairman, the man would tell the funds that was supposed to be meant for the local government, he would tell them for a very long time.
Even though you later defected to join his party, even while he was president.
Despite the fact that the federal government, I mean the Supreme Court, said that he has no power to withhold such a money, the man still refused to release the money until an intervention from Prince Bola Ajibola and some other well-meaning Nigerians. So a dictator will always be a dictator. This man who has no respect for the rule of law, and it's typical of all dictators. I can tell you that Buhari will not be better than Obasanjo when he gets into power. Buhari who backdated laws. You know, let me ask you,
are you saying if Buhari became president, for instance, he would just rubbish the National Assembly? The National Assembly would have no role to play. He would sit down and take decisions on his own, and nothing would happen.
National Assembly has become an institution that nobody can easily rubbish. But at the head of the executive arm of the government, you have the power not to execute some certain laws. I've just given you an example of Obasanjo.
I'm just saying these institutional checks and balances you have in place, like the National Assembly, the judiciary. So, because we all know what dictators do. When dictators basically usurp the responsibility of these other institutions, and you're saying that if this man became president, because he was a military dictator, in a democracy now, that's what he would do.
He will. You see, that is what he will attempt to do. Because of those institutions that are already in place, might make it a bit difficult for him. But wherever he could get away with it, like Obasanjo did, when the judiciary gave some certain judgment, he refused to implement, to respect such judgment. This man might probably do worse. Here is a man who does not even have a decency of not allowing people who committed certain offenses before he came into power, and he backdated all these offenses and killed them. That shows you...
And he's definitely going to do it again.
That shows you the kind of person he is.
Anyway, I'm going to come back to you. Libros, this is quite a very topical, it's one of the most contentious issues about General Buhari. I mean, we've had the PDP actually come out to say that he's a dictator and would remain a dictator. He did talk about, you know, obeying, for instance, court order, that in the case of Obasanjo, that Obasanjo did not obey certain court orders. Some people would argue that even in the case of President Goodluck Jonathan, we've had situations where the president did not obey certain court.
He's not a former military officer, and so we are still seeing some of these traits. If in the case of Obasanjo, if you remember in 1999 how he became the head of state of Nigeria, the president of Nigeria, by certain persons who felt Nigeria belonged to them. And also at that time, these institutions we mentioned had not really taken foothold in our system, and so it was easy for Obasanjo at that time to run riots around some of these institutions. Now you have firmer, he even admitted that you have firmer institutions now than before, and that if in his last statement he said he might attempt to, which means he has also considered that this man is not the same man that he was in 1983. And so there is no way, even if you, what we are basically saying here is you cannot be a dictator and have the power. We are saying the kind of court followership that Buhari has now and he has always had. You cannot be a dictator and resort to following the laid down rule of law to ventilate your grievances against the system. We had seen people who will rather resort to self-help, but consistently for 3 times now he had done that. And then also we had seen situations where we know Obasanjo for who he is, and also we've seen former military head of states. Obasanjo, I will not completely say that Obasanjo had presented himself before Nigerians, you know, in this same manner. And so you can truly not compare the two of them. And then also, we had seen his disposition and his behavior in matters of public interest. And then also, if you juxtapose that with that of Buhari, and you now begin to compare how dictators behave, you would truly say that Buhari is not one, because he's been able to distinguish himself from behaving in that manner. And then also, you said something that is very germane. Dictators will not play by the rules. And what they do, they try to circumvent institutions, and even if possible, pull down institutions. Backdating laws, we didn't have a National Assembly. All you had was the Supreme Military Council the military rule by decrees. And so now that you have a National Assembly that is completely different from the executive arm, it will not be easy for somebody to sit down and say he wants to backdate. Are you now telling me that if Buhari is voted into office, that he will by fiat outlaw the National Assembly, outlaw the judiciary, and begins to rule the way he likes?
You're shaking your head. You probably want to explain certain things.
Well, is it the way he's presenting it is not the way I said it. Because the man is now trying to go through the democratic process to get into power.
Yeah.
Does not really mean that he will now, when he enters, he doesn't even have the power to get rid of the legislative arm, get rid of the judiciary, or going to do things in his own way. All those institutions they are supposed to be a check and balances for any dictator. So that is the purpose why they are there. But a dictator will still find a way. If there are judgments, he will find a way to select the judgment that he is going to abide with, that will suit his own purpose. If it is to make laws too, he will always find a way. The executive arm of the government are so powerful that they can do a lot of things.
I'll give you an example.
And let me finish. Let me
just give you an example, because you know,
he said something.
Just hold on. I'm going to bring you in. I'm going to bring you in. But I'm going to bring you in. But let me just ask you some questions. Some people have given instances of where the current president, Goodluck Jonathan, actually, flouted court orders and basically or literally refused to obey them. I can count the case of
Salami comes to mind.
Salami, quite a number of cases. Now, in this case, Jonathan is not a dictator.
No, you see, if the particular case you just mentioned is a very, very interesting case, and I'm very sure that in your heart of hearts, you don't pray for somebody like Salami again within our judiciary system.
No, but
no. Look, let me. You see,
okay, go on, I'm listening.
There's a certain judgment that even if you look at it.
The reason I'm saying this, I don't want us to dwell on that case. I don't want us to go back to it. I just made a reference.
I don't think it's a very good example because the case of Salami happens to be a very bad one. That I pray that we don't have such Salami in our judicial system again.
Okay. And so it takes the president to interpret.
No, you see, what President did there is that sometimes there's a moral angle to all issues.
Now that's a different
So if the president has a responsibility to look and balance things out, and I think in that sense he made the correct judgment.
Basically, what he's saying
I give him credit for that.
If gives a judgment,
no, that's not,
and the president views it differently, he should not obey.
And so that's moral ground. And then the president is not a dictator. That's not what I meant. But anyway, I'm telling you that he has a responsibility to balance things. He's the president of Nigeria, and the onus is on him to make sure peace reign in every part of the country, even in the three arms of the government.
And quickly, you said something
that's where there is a problem.
You said something that is very germane also.
The president to make sure peace reigns.
Yeah.
The president can take any decision at all in the name of
in the interest of the nation.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They said something that is very germane. This institution, Obasanjo tried it, but this institution already exists. And at the end of the day, these institutions are there to check some of the abuses in this office. And so, no matter, we all have, like a fella said, this uprising will bring out the beast in us. At every point, there's that little drop of dictatorship in man without laws. And so, these laws, like the institutions that we have, are there to checkmate excesses. That is why there are different arms of government for checks and balances.
Because
so even if you bring in...
If himself becomes the president today, there are certain things you would definitely...
So even if you want to exhibit those dictators...
Anyway, gentlemen, we're going to take a break here because we're still going to continue this discussion. We'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue the discussion on General Buhari's appearance at Chatham House. Don't go away. Every day, every hour, and every minute, news break in Nigeria. Things happen so fast, it's most times difficult to track and comprehend them. But that's what we do right here on DEJI360. 2015, would you want to come back again?
It's like asking Jesus Christ if he knew he was going to die, will you want to come back as the savior of the world again?
We do not just help you track the stories, we break them down, explore all the angles, analyze the issues so that you can fully comprehend the stories and use them to make the right decisions.
On insecurity, there is a genuine cause for worry, both within and outside Nigeria. Apart from the civil war era, at no other time in our history has Nigeria been this insecure. Boko Haram has suddenly put Nigeria on the terrorism map, killing more than 13,000 of our nationals, displacing millions internally and externally, and at a time holding on to portions of our territory the size of Belgium. What has been consistently lacking is the required leadership in our battle against insurgency. I, as a retired general and a former head of state, have always known about our soldiers. They are capable, they are well-trained, patriotic, brave, and always ready to do their duty in the service of our country. You can bear witness to the gallant role of our military in Burma, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Darfur, and in many other peacekeeping operations in several parts of the world. But in the matter of this insurgency, our soldiers have neither received the necessary support nor the required incentives to tackle this problem. The government has also failed in any effort towards a multidimensional response to this problem, leading to a situation in which we have now become dependent on our neighbors to come to our rescue. Let me assure you that if I am elected president, the world will have no cause to worry about Nigeria as it has so recently. That Nigeria will return to its stabilizing role in West Africa, and that no inch of Nigerian territory will ever be lost to the enemy, because we will pay special attention to the welfare of our soldiers in and out of service. We will give them adequate and modern arms and ammunition to work with. We will improve intelligence gathering and border patrols to choke Boko Haram's financial and equipment channels. We will be tough on terrorism and tough on its root causes by initiating a comprehensive economic development plan, promoting infrastructural development, job creation, agriculture and industry in the affected areas. We will always act on time and not allow problems to irresponsibly fester. And I, Muhammad Buhari, will always lead from the front. And return Nigeria to its leadership role in regional and international efforts to combat terrorism.
Liberals, you just wonder if the president was actually listening to this, because suddenly it's like the government is beginning to act now on this issue of security. Well, we see weapons now being given to our soldiers. And then we saw the president in camouflage, military camouflage, yesterday. Actually, what some people will say, or like Buhari put it, leading from the front.
Yes, it's just unfortunate that we like fire brigade approach. And that is why even people that have blamed the government...
Because if not for the postponement of this election, you wonder if the president would have had the time to do all
this opportunity. Because, like Buhari said, when you refuse to act timelessly, and this is what happens, and then it will be difficult for you to even convince people that truly you are doing this for the genuine cause of the fact that you love Nigeria, not because election. And that's why some of us are beginning to say, look, let's do this election, yearly. Let it be an annual thing, so that some of these governance that we are beginning to see all of a sudden, we can see them, they can be replicated annually. Because it is only when we have election that our government seems to work. And so we see now suddenly soldiers, they are suddenly brave, and then they have equipment, and then the president is leading from the front, paying a visit to the troops at the war front, and not listening to advisors who will tell him, no, it is dangerous to go there. Unannounced visits, But be that as it may, I also, the solutions provided by General Muhammadu Buhari, for me, I would say, fantastic but political statements.
God bless you.
Political statement, in the sense that the same thing I talked about with the government at the center wanting to do everything. We have local government in these places.
No, but in terms of security, you would expect the government at the center.
Yes, what I'm saying is you have on infrastructural development. The government at the center is saying we will encourage infrastructural development. You have local government at these places. You have state government. What you need to do is to provide the framework to enable the government at the local level work properly, and then we'll be talking about state policing, now, local government policing.
Because we're running out of time, let me just pause you a bit there on this issue of security and get your thoughts very quickly.
Well, the insecurity that we're experiencing in Nigeria is not peculiar to Nigeria. The insurgents, the terrorism is a global thing.
Yeah, but that's the problem I have when I hear this thing about
let me finish.
A global problem.
It's a global thing.
It's still not an excuse for you not being able
let me
to
finish. I'm not finished. It's a global thing. And mind you, the president has come out to say that most of our equipments, military equipments, are outdated, and the successive government, those people who are before him, his predecessor, they have not, even the military administrators or head of state, they did not even take time to modernize our armory, to bring in new equipment. It is just in recent time that they've just brought in new equipment, and you're beginning to see the difference. You see, it shows that so people before him, like Buhari, have not really governed this country very well.
Including him for 4 years.
They have not really governed this country very well. Even the military men, one would have thought that a military man will have known the importance of modern weaponry. But unfortunately, people like Buhari, Babangida Obasanjo did not do so. So you are now trying to heap all the blames of the inadequacies of our past leaders, military rulers, on a gentleman like Jonathan, who is trying to make the best of the situation he found himself.
DG, for 5 years, for 5 years and 6 months, the president also did not realize that this equipment were obsolete.
Besides,
for 5 years,
the president actually came out to confirm and to admit that he underestimated the Boko Haram.
that's what we are saying. It is an admission on the part of the president that, look, this Boko Haram, I did not act timeously. I should have acted, but I didn't act because I didn't see this problem as a problem. Meanwhile, people were dying. If people are dying and the president does not see that as a problem, I wonder what he will see as a problem.
Now let's just we'll take a very short break. When we come back, there's a video I want you to see about what actually happened on the sidelines of that event at Chatham House in London. I want your take on that. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back. Every day, every hour, and every minute, news break in Nigeria. Things happen so fast, it's most times difficult to track and comprehend them. But that's what we do right here on DEJI360. 2015, would you want to come back again?
It's like asking Jesus Christ if he knew he was going to die, will you want to come back as the savior of the world again?
We do not just help you track the stories, we break them down, explore all the angles, analyze the issues so that you can fully comprehend the stories and use them to make the right decisions.